Tonight, taking a look at the leaderboard 1 week into the election campaign.
Right now, Mark Carney is a political freight train, and he's bearing down on Pierre Poilievre and Jagmeet Singh.
Why the Liberals are emerging as frontrunners in a tightly contested race. Plus, the latest platform pitches to try to win your vote.
It's time to reinvest, rebuild, and recharge our country for a change.
To give first-time homebuyers public-backed, low-interest, fixed-term loans.
The race against the clock in a search for survivors of a devastating earthquake. And Ontario's high-impact ice storm.
It's just really hard to look at right now.
Hundreds of thousands in the dark as people in the east brace for freezing rain.
CTV National News with Heather Butts.
Good evening. We are heading into the second week of the federal election campaign, one that months ago seemed to already have a clear winner. But then Donald Trump returned to the White House, Mark Carney became prime minister, and a barrage of tariff threats hit Canada. CTV's Colton Prale takes a look at how things have changed on day 8 of the campaign.
A week into the race and Liberal polling numbers are taking off. According to new polling data from Nanos Research, Mark Carney's team is up 8 points in just the last week, not only taking votes back from the Conservatives, but pulling from the Bloc, Greens, and the NDP.
Right now, Mark Carney is a political freight train, and he's bearing down on Pierre Poilievre and Jagmeet Singh. It's
It's setting the stage for a two-horse race between Mark Carney and Pierre Poilievre. Two leaders pitching very different elections, one about Donald Trump's tariffs, the other about affordability. Top Conservative strategists say that's a problem.
Being in sync with the electorate on those issues drove them to sort of untold heights. And then being out of sync with voters with respect to Trump has basically pulled the house of cards, caused it to fall apart on them.
The Trump issue isn't going away. Wednesday, the U.S. president is expected to announce sweeping reciprocal tariffs on countries around the world, including Canada. And his auto tariffs are also set to hit this week.
With the April 2 tariff announcements, whatever they might be, it'll probably be another good week for the Liberals unless Mark Carney makes some sort of misstep.
But affordability is still one of the biggest issues on voters' minds. Liberal strategists say if that takes center stage, the race could see another significant upheaval.
We don't know where this goes, and there is a level of unpredictability, and people start to feel the pain. Perhaps those who are in office now, which is to say Mr. Carney, might become the subject and object of some of that.
But for the moment, it's Carney who Canadians would rather see serve as their prime minister, with a 15-point lead over Pierre Poilievre.
All of this paints a challenging picture for the NDP, Blocs, and the Green, who find themselves struggling to capture voters' attention or remain relevant in Canada's response to Donald Trump. Heather.
Colton, thank you. Vying for the attention of voters this weekend, many parties put the focus on affordability, with policy announcements centered on issues like home ownership and the capital gains tax. CTV's Jeremy Sharon explains.
In a morning stop at a plastics manufacturing plant, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre kicked off the second week of his campaign with a pitch to boost domestic investments.
No capital gains when you reinvest the money here in Canada. This will be like economic rocket fuel for Canada.
The proposed policy, a capital gains tax deferral. As long as the money is reinvested in a Canadian company within 18 months, tax wouldn't be owed until investors cash out or move the money out of the country.
Think of companies that have invested abroad. This would allow them to sell those foreign investments and bring it home tax-free.
The Conservative Party estimates the policy will cost $5 billion the first year. The NDP in British Columbia to start its second week of the campaign with a promise to help Canadians buy their first home.
To give first-time homebuyers public-backed, low-interest, fixed-term loans to buy their first home.
Jagmeet Singh said today his party would expand the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation's mandate, pushing them to offer Canadians what he says governments have already been offering to developers.
They've already been doing that for wealthy developers. They just haven't done it for everyday families.
While Bloc Québécois leader Yves-François Blanchet announced a slew of policies today aimed to help seniors facing financial pressures.
To make them certain that their purchase power is protected.
Meanwhile, Liberal leader Mark Carney, who launched his campaign office in Nepean yesterday, had no public campaign stops today. His party unveiled last week plans to diversify Canada's trade and supports for auto industry workers. Heather?
Jeremy Charon in Ottawa. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre brushed off accusations of campaign turmoil today, with strategists suggesting he should focus more squarely on U.S. threats. And as CTV's Kamal Karamali reports, it's something people in his own party say they want to see.
Thank you. In a press conference where Conservative candidates promised to protect police,
what we're going to implement are changes to the Canadian Criminal Code.
They were instead left defending their own party's messaging.
We're getting a great response at the doors, and so we're going to keep putting that message forward.
There have been talks of turmoil and tension within the campaign, brought on by too much focus on other issues and not enough on the U.S. tariff threats.
Would you like to see more of that from your party as a candidate?
I would like to see more.
Sources within the Conservative Party have described to multiple news outlets a disorganized campaign, with Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre putting too much attention into attacking the Liberals and not enough on U.S. President Donald Trump and the threat of a trade war.
You think that you need to make an adjustment?
Today, Poilievre brushed off suggestions of internal strife.
We are standing up to the Americans.
And put more focus on Trump.
President Trump has said he wants the Liberals back in power. We know why, because they will keep Canada weak and keep our investment flowing out of this country to the U.S.
Political experts believe Poilievre is betting the focus on Trump will fade and voters will eventually care more about affordability.
I think what you're seeing is Pierre trying to remain focused on those salient issues and really hope we can shift the debate back to what happens after the trade dispute.
But with just over a month to go until Election Day, political pundits are now questioning whether that gamble will pay off in time. Heather.
Kamal, thanks. Mark Carney is facing growing pressure from the Conservatives to fire a Liberal Party candidate after the incumbent MP said his opponent should be turned over to the Chinese government. CTV's Judy Trin reports.
No family should ever have to worry about their safety.
Incumbent Liberal Paul Chang, a former police officer in Ontario's York region, took aim at Conservative rival Joe Tay, a democracy activist in ethnic media. In a January interview with Mingpao News, Chang urged people to bring Tay to the Chinese consulate in Toronto to collect a bounty of 1 million Hong Kong dollars.
This is the most kind of obvious example of the manifestation of China's foreign interference when a incumbent MP would say something like that to the press.
Hi, I'm Joe Tay.
Before he was a Conservative candidate, Tay, born in Hong Kong, criticized the region's administration for obeying China's orders to crack down on civilian rights. The opposition is calling on the Liberal leader to fire Chang as a candidate.
If Mark Carney would allow his Liberal MP to make a comment like this, when would he ever protect Canada or Canadians against foreign hostility?
He is a police officer, and he ought to know that when the CCP went out and put a bounty on anybody, including Canadians, that cannot be acceptable.
Drawing more attention to the specter of foreign interference, Tay is running in Don Valley North, the same riding that former Liberal Han Dong represented. A commission looking into foreign interference cleared Dong of claims he had advised Chinese officials. As Mark Carney's campaign shifts to the Toronto region, the Liberals say Chang has apologized for his significant lapse in judgment and is clear he'll stand shoulder to shoulder with the people of Hong Kong. But democracy advocates say they are unsure about that commitment. According to Statistics Canada, nearly half of the residents in Markham are ethnic Chinese. 1 in 5 come from China. Mark Carney says all the Liberal candidates have been carefully vetted for foreign interference, but it has been 2 months since Paul Chang made his comments to Chinese language media. Heather.
All right, Judy, thank you. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh was in the Metro Vancouver area today trying to shore up support in BC. The move comes as sources say the party is trying to recalibrate heading into week 2. CTV's Rachel Aiello with what's at stake on the West Coast.
How you doing, everybody? NDP leader Jagmeet Singh kicked off the second week of the federal election, rallying supporters in ridings neighboring his own. After a rocky start, the NDP are hoping some mountain air will help breathe new energy into their campaign. Today, Singh signaled he's ready to switch up his strategy and the pitch that he's making to voters.
If you elect more New Democrats, we're going to do great things for you. If you elect enough of us, I would be honored to serve as Prime Minister, and I'll fight every single day to make sure people's lives are better.
While BC is where the NDP hold half of its seats, the party's popularity appears to be slipping in the province. Some polling suggests Singh may even be at risk of losing his own riding. But incumbent BC MPs running for re-election say the polls have been proven wrong before and don't match what they're hearing on the ground.
I don't meet a lot of people at the doorstep that are supporting the other parties, quite frankly. They recognize the NDP's contributions and they want to see more NDP MPs in Parliament.
Sources close to the NDP's national campaign know the first week of the race didn't go that well for them, and the party is now trying to massage its messaging to fit the moment.
What New Democrats have to do now is saying, it's okay that you like Carney, but you still need us, and here's why. The NDP campaign will be boarding the ferry tonight for Victoria. Singh has a few events on the island tomorrow, and then will be wheels up to another Western battleground, Edmonton. Rachel Aiello, CTV News, Port Moody, British Columbia.
For more insight on week 1 and what lies ahead, we turn to CTV's chief political correspondent, Vashi Kapelos. Vashi, break down the first days of this campaign for us. What are your big takeaways?
Hi, Heather. I think the simplest way to kind of break down what happened over the first week is best laid plans. Well, good luck, right? All the campaigns seem to come out of the gate initially talking about things you would expect to in a campaign: tax cuts, affordability, addressing the cost of living crisis around the country. But they were quickly swayed off course when it comes to Donald Trump, because of course on Wednesday they signaled in the White House that he would announce new tariffs on autos, and boom, there we went. The rest of the campaign overtaken by the dominance really of the threat of those tariffs and the response of the Canadian government. Now, Mark Carney isn't just the Liberal leader, he's also the Prime Minister, a role he assumed for in and around 24 to 48 hours over the campaign this week. And certainly public opinion polls are bearing out the idea that getting to take that role on during a campaign is to the advantage of the Liberals and to the disadvantage of opposition parties.
And with that in mind, Vashi, what are you watching for in the coming week?
Well, Heather, what I'll really be looking at is exactly how last week kind of bleeds into this week. And by that, I mean there's more tariffs. Exactly a week after the announcement of those auto ones, they're supposed to come into impact. We've got the reciprocal tariffs, the ones attached to the border. Like, how many tariffs ultimately does Donald Trump apply to Canada, and how much damage is there to Canada's economy? I think that decision will greatly inform the rest of the campaign going forward. Now, if he hesitates, however, and does not throw tariffs and waits, for example, till the end of the election, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but let's say it did, well, that could have a very different political impact, one that is perhaps harder to measure based on current trends than it would be otherwise. So I'll be keeping my eye on Wednesday, like most Canadians, I think, Heather.
All right, Vashi, thank you for your insight. Turning to another major story in the country this weekend, a powerful ice storm has wiped out power to hundreds of thousands of people in Ontario. That weather system now working its way east, heading for the Maritimes. CTV's Sarah Plowman on what people are up against.
Everywhere you look, branches buckle under the weight of a storm that coated large pockets of Ontario in ice before heading east.
As you can hear the cracking
in behind. We've got power lines down.
Waking up to this was overwhelming.
It's just really hard to look at right now.
The buildup of ice was no match for trees or hydro poles. Now hundreds of thousands of homes in Ontario have no power.
So we anticipate, given the scale and impact of this storm, that it will take several days to get every last customer restored.
Several cities have declared a state of emergency, including Peterborough. Its mayor estimates the cleanup will take between 2 to 3 weeks.
There is an extensive amount of damage, particularly with trees. Hydro lines are down. And right now we probably have about 40,000 individuals that don't have any power.
In and around Barrie, there was no sign of spring either, more like a winter wasteland.
We're kind of struggling to keep ourselves going. We got generators going, power lines are down, so we got no power. But yeah, it's pretty hard.
Hopefully it's the last time I do it this year.
In Ottawa, Saturday meant shoveling. Sunday, salting.
It's Canada, it's spring, you kind of expect it, and you still got to keep moving.
Environment Canada has issued weather warnings for parts of Quebec and the Maritimes. Here in New Brunswick, it's started snowing already. It's expected to turn to ice pellets and then freezing rain by the morning. Heather.
That storm not over yet. Thank you, Sarah. Coming up.
It makes a difference if I can get a few things here.
The growing problem of food insecurity and how it's become an election issue. Plus, a third term for Donald Trump, what the U.S. president has to say about that idea. Rescuers in Myanmar and Thailand are racing against the clock to try and save any survivors of this week's devastating earthquake. A dramatic moment caught on camera as rescuers pulled a woman and child alive from the rubble of a hotel. Friday's 7.7 magnitude quake has left devastation across the region, with more than 1,700 people killed.
I'm just telling you, I have had 4 people say, please run again.
U.S. President Donald Trump speaking out tonight after making comments this weekend that he's not joking about finding a way to run for a third term. The U.S. Constitution bars such a move, but Trump has said there are methods to achieving it.
I know how to be a man. But to be a man on your terms is to be no priest. And I have chosen to be a priest.
And some sad news from the entertainment world. Actor Richard Chamberlain, star of The Thorn Birds and Dr. Kildare, has died just 2 days before his 91st birthday. Chamberlain passed away in Hawaii of complications from a stroke. Still ahead tonight, the Prairie Province setting the trend and scrapping the industrial carbon tax. Saskatchewan says it will be the first carbon tax-free province this week when it removes its industrial carbon levy. This as federal leaders are divided on the future of the tax. CTV's Alison Bamford has more on the decision.
Saskatchewan's premier is ditching the province's industrial carbon tax.
Saskatchewan is now a carbon tax-free province.
An announcement earlier this week that yielded strong words from the federal energy minister, who compared Scott Moe and Pierre Poilievre to Donald Trump, saying they think big polluters should get a free pass and everyday Canadians should pay the price.
It's elbows up when it comes to defending the auto industry in Eastern Canada. But certainly when it comes to defending farmers and Saskatchewan industries that are creating wealth across this nation, it's elbows down and taxes up.
Moe says he's taking cues from federal leaders. Mark Carney eliminated the consumer carbon tax effective April 1st, and Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre has pledged to take it a step further, removing industrial carbon pricing if elected.
It's the bad idea for Canada right now. If we look at our 10 largest non-U.S. trading partners, All of them have carbon pricing systems.
Studies show industrial carbon pricing is Canada's single biggest driver to reducing emissions. Industry has spent billions in the last decade to comply.
There'd be a lot of stranded assets and sunk costs if provinces were to walk away from these systems.
But one economist says carbon pricing loses impact from a climate and business perspective if not everyone follows along.
When one person stops doing it, it very quickly cascades.
The Alberta government told CTV News it's reviewing emissions regulations and discussing a wide range of options. According to emails obtained by investigative online magazine The Narwhal, those options reportedly include killing the industrial carbon tax.
Alberta, I think, is a much higher stakes environment than Saskatchewan, or really than any other province in Canada. It's about half our industrial emissions nationally.
Typically, if a province removes its industrial tax, the federal government can step in and impose its own carbon levy. But during an election campaign, experts say there's almost no chance of that happening. Alison Bamford, CTV News, Saskatoon.
Still ahead, food for thought this election. Canadians searching for answers in their ballot box question. With the election campaign in full swing, we're putting the spotlight on the issues troubling Canadians, among them food insecurity. CTV's Alex Karpa sheds light on why it's a growing concern.
Robert Lassie has been volunteering at Winnipeg's Agape Table for 15 years. The nonprofit organization feeds the city's most vulnerable.
It helps them a lot when I'm here, and I enjoy it.
The 77-year-old not only says he volunteers, but he also relies on the organization for food.
It keeps getting harder when you have to buy food. It makes a difference if I can get a few things here.
And it's getting harder to feed the growing demand overall.
We're obviously still helping the marginalized, but now it's the newcomers and it's the refugees. But now with the new sector coming in is the working poor, just trying to make ends meet.
In 2019, Agape Table served around 85,000 meals. In 2024, that number more than doubled to 173,000. That number is expected to rise further this year. Food banks in Manitoba aren't the only ones seeing a rise in need. This is a deepening crisis that many nonprofits are seeing right across the country. There were more than 2 million visits recorded in March 2024, a 90% increase from March 2019.
The reality is, I think all food banks across this country are looking to see issues of food security and poverty reduction be front and center as we head into this federal election.
Experts say the high cost of living is driving more Canadians to food banks, an issue that gets overlooked.
As soon as you have a complicated issue, politicians may not be well equipped or willing to address this issue.
The federal government has dedicated $1 billion towards a national school food program, but experts say until the high cost of living goes down, demand for food banks will only continue to rise right across the country. Alex Karpa, CTV News, Winnipeg.
That is our newscast for this Sunday night. I'm Heather Butts. For all of us at CTV National News, thank you for watching. I hope you can join Sandy and Omar tomorrow, and I will see you again on Friday. Good night.